French broadsheet of record Le Monde last week dubbed him Francois of Arabia, the French president, in Riyadh after sealing a deal in Doha to sell Rafale fighter jets to Qatar, and ahead of Tuesday, when François Hollande will become the first ever Western leader to attend a Gulf Cooperation Council summit. Hollande's endeared himself to Sunni monarchies with a tough line on Syria, support for the Saudi-led intervention in Yemen with satellite intelligence, and what's widely seen as a more hawkish stance on Iran's nuclear negotiations than Barack Obama's administration. Obama, who, by the way, will be hosting those same GCC leaders next week at Camp David. Could the Gulf really turn to France as its protector in the region? And what does it all say about François Hollande? He ran as a socialist, a champion of human rights, but is prepared to do business with regimes that are big on the death penalty, won't let women drive in the case of Saudi Arabia, and have shown a patchy record in stopping the financing for jihadists. Today in the France 24 debate, François of Arabia with us to talk about it. Olivier Delage of sister station Radio France International, the author of Geopolitics of Saudi Arabia. Thanks for being back with us.
Thank you.
And thanks as well to former French ambassador to Iran, François Nicolo.
Good evening.
From Dubai, Gulf analyst Theodore Karadzic. We'll be joined later from New York by Tony Badran, research fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. Before we talk about that budding love affair between France and the Arabian Peninsula, let's talk about what's often called toys for the boys. France concluding a deal to sell 24 Rafale fighter jets with Qatar. The sale concluded the third on the trot for years. The Dassault-made fighter jet seemed cursed with its only client, the French army. But the ceremony in Qatar closely follows deals with Egypt and India. The Egyptians, by the way, priming the pump thanks to Saudi financing, the same Saudis who paid the $3 billion for France to re-equip the Lebanese army. Olivier Delage, the list runs longer when you look at possible deals. Thales, a French company, has proposed selling a Mark III air defense system to the Saudis. There's a lot of defense deals either made or in the process of being made between France and the Gulf.
Yeah, but there is nothing new in that. I mean, when I was thinking of this today, it reminded me of the late 70s. Then Carter was in the White House, and he elicited a lot of distrust from the Gulf states because he has ditched the Shah of Iran. Then Giscard made a tour of the Gulf states in March 80, and a lot of arms deals were concluded then. So France is no newcomer in the Gulf in terms of arms deals, and of course any weapon contract is very much a political one, so it depends where you stand at a given moment, and obviously at the moment France is well placed.
History repeating itself, François Nicolo?
Yes, in some way history always repeats itself, but not coming back at exactly the same point. You know, it goes in spirals, if I may say. But looking at what's happening, I mean, we should not reduce the whole thing to business, even military business. There has been a strategic choice made by the French diplomacy in favor of the monarchies of the Arabian Peninsula. This choice was already, I mean, present in the former president, I mean, Sarkozy's time. It has been confirmed by President Hollande, and it's true that France today is rewarded by this steady choice, in favor of the kingdoms of the Arabian Peninsula. Yes.
When François Hollande beat Nicolas Sarkozy in 2012, did you think then that he would continue and build on the same policy as his conservative predecessor?
Yes, because, you know, external policy does not mix with internal politics. And it was already visible during the campaign that Hollande would not introduce major changes in France's political diplomatic line. It was very obvious at the time.
All right, with most notably a military base in Abu Dhabi, France's relationship with the Gulf, as Olivier and François Nicolas were saying is no flash in the pan. Certainly, that's what François Hollande said earlier in the day in Doha. He described it as, I guess you could say, a long and beautiful friendship.
If we're present here in Qatar and also elsewhere in the region, it's because there's a long tradition of cooperation, but also because France is seen as a reliable country, one that partner countries can trust.
A reliable country, one that partner countries can trust. Tony Badran, your thoughts on those words?
Yes, I think that's actually the key sentence here, because this is what's shaping this entire scene is really the Obama administration's decision to reset the order in the region and the American relationship with the region, with a very obvious tilt towards Tehran, not just making strides and concessions toward a nuclear agreement, but also more broadly to reconfigure some form of partnership, what the president and his administration call equilibrium, euphemistically, whereas in fact it elevates Iranian interests over traditional allied interests. And we can see this from the loud rancor of not just the Gulf Arab states, but also other traditional allies in the region, from Turkey and Israel as well. So the reliability
is that
and
really
the confidence.
The case, Tony, when you see, for instance, that Barack Obama went out of his way to come after the funeral of King Abdallah? John Kerry's going to be there this weekend. Is he really shunning the Saudis and the Gulf?
Well, I mean, actions speak louder than words. We saw that in places like Syria. We saw it even in Yemen, really. But beyond that, it's really the rhetoric itself is not even very encouraging. So, for instance, a few weeks prior to the planned GCC summit in Camp David that President Obama had arranged, we already started seeing leaks in the American media by the White House about the limits of what the United States is going to do in that summit and what the messaging of that summit is going to be, which is to have the Arab Gulf states focus on their internal problems and not on Iran.
Theodore Karadzic, do you agree with Tony Badran?
I do, in a certain sense. There's clearly a move by the Obama administration to actually withdraw from the region and also to adjust its force structure. I think that what the Gulf states are seeing is clearly echoed by other guests on the show, which is that the GCC states see America as constantly behind the curve. And I think France has very wisely and patiently bided its time through negotiation and constant visits to the region on several levels, at the high level, at the deputy minister level, and so on, to nurture these relationships and wait for the time that's right politically to move forward. And that's what's impressed me about Paris in the last few years, is that you're always seeing visits by high-ranking individuals to the region. And at the same time, the region is, particularly the GCC states, are seeing that France is doing a lot more than the British or the Americans in places like Africa, as well as diplomatically throughout the rest of the region itself.
François Nicolas.
No, frankly, I doubt very much that the United States are going to withdraw from the Gulf. If you look at the presence today, I don't see the fifth fleet, which is based in Bahrain and leaving Bahrain to go somewhere else. And you know, this region is really a key point, the middle point between East and West, and for United States, even beyond the question of oil and the control of oil fields, it is a strategic region, and certainly the United States won't leave another country, I mean, take the lead in this region. It's not tomorrow that China is going to take the lead and play a role in offering its help to the countries of the region. So I frankly believe the United States are here to stay. They're reinforcing, in fact, their military presence in the region.
In fact, just an hour ago, we had a dispatch. The U.S. Navy has begun accompanying with its warships British flag commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz as a result of Iran's detention last week of a Marshall Islands flagged ship, Theodore Karadzic. The U.S. is not backing off when it comes to tension with Iran on that score.
My point is that I'm looking out into the near term, out to 2020, and how the Gulf security architecture is going to change. The point is that France is positioning itself where you're going to have probably a greater French presence, if you will, as opposed to the U.S., which of course will retain its Fifth Fleet capabilities. But at the same time, it's going to go back to what the U.S. position was perhaps in the 80s, which was to prepo a lot of material in the region for maybe a future contingency. Of course, right now, the U.S. is active in the maritime sphere, but also, of course, with the U.S.-led operations that France is participating in the Levant. So I'm seeing this as a transitional period, and we have to take the long term on this. It's not just day by day, but what's happening in the month of May of 2015 is going to reshape the region geopolitically and geostrategically for many years to come.
How so?
I think that we're going to see a shift in the players in the Gulf security architecture that's going to bring in perhaps different types of partners. And I know that your colleague there mentioned China. We're going to have, I think, a change in the way that Gulf states partner with other countries. And we've seen this in maritime exercises. We've seen it in counter-piracy operations. We've seen it increasingly with naval visits or visits of high-level officials from Asia. The region is trans-regional, and it's a global hub. And I think that as this situation evolves, and with Iran coming into market, and also as Iran moves through its 15-year penalty phase, if you will, there's going to be a change in the security landscape. And I think that we're going to see other players in a more multi-dimensional way, and France is going to be one of them.
So will it be a safer or more dangerous place than Olivier Darage?
Well, that I can't tell. It's very likely to remain dangerous. But in their wildest dreams, the French do not even think of replacing the US in the Gulf. And if we take the long view, as we just were advised to do, 30 years from now, the shale gas in the US will most probably be nearly depleted. And if the US can, at the moment, do without the Middle East oil, first of all, its allies in Europe do not, and you cannot dish the allies. And second, as was mentioned earlier, I mean, if the US withdrew, which is not going to happen, who is going to take its place? Russia? No way. China? I don't see the US letting that happen. So, in fact, I think even if there is a Middle East fatigue in the US, they will have to stay because they have no choice.
Tony Badran?
Oh, no, I definitely agree. I don't think anything can replace the position of the United States in the Gulf. And I don't think that the Saudis are necessarily seeking to replace the United States. I think what they are doing has to do with a complaint with regard and a reaction to the U.S. Current strategy under this current administration of abandoning a policy of containment with Iran and not living up to how the Saudis see the commitments of security as they perceive them that have dominated for the last 60 years. And I think the maneuvers with France basically speak to this discomfort with the United States posture.
But
under this current
is
administration.
France ahead or behind the curve, Tony Badran, when you think that Iran is this nation of 80 million people with a strong middle class? For how long do you isolate Iran?
Well, Iran may have a strong middle class, but it also is the leading state sponsor of terrorism, I mean, and a destabilizing state in the Middle East. So it's not, you know, the talking points of the Obama administration are that somehow a nuclear deal is going to lead to modernization and openness in Iran. I'm not sure if many people agree with this, especially because, you know, if you could look at it in a very different way and say that a nuclear agreement locks in the regime in place. And the partnership that the Obama administration, the de facto partnership, has had in the region has not been with the moderates, has pretty much been with the IRGC and its assets, be it the Shiite militia in Iraq or even the de facto alliance between the Lebanese armed forces and Hezbollah in Lebanon.
I'm sorry, I'm losing you in Lebanon. How is the United States allied with Hezbollah?
Oh, no, the United States backs the Lebanese armed forces in Lebanon, but the Lebanese armed forces are essentially a tool of Hezbollah, or pretty much infiltrated by Hezbollah. But the United States has reconfigured that partnership in terms of fighting Sunni Islamic extremists. And so ultimately, the United States is backing a political order in Lebanon and in Iraq that is essentially a pro-Iranian order in both countries.
François Nicoulot?
No, about Iran, I mean, it's understandable. I mean, the countries of the Persian Gulf or the Peninsula, Arabian Peninsula, have been traumatized by the policy. I mean, at the beginning of the revolution, one has to remember the speeches of Imam Khomeini. They were really deeply destabilizing. I mean, Khomeini was really asking for aiming for the fall of the House of Saud. He was also pleading for the fall of Saddam Hussein. So people were, of course, I mean, this remains in the mind of all the people of the region. Today, things have changed. I mean, I believe that the revolutionary fervor of the Iranian Republic has a bit, you know, has a bit gone down, a bit stabilized. And today it's true that Iran, I mean, still frightens people in the region. But frankly, the more Iran is isolated and discriminated in the region, the more it is encouraged to play a destabilizing role. If Iran is integrated, of course, it's a gamble. It's not sure, but the gamble that we should make is that if Iran is integrated in the regional game, it will start playing a more positive role. I mean, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not because you're a friend of Saudi Arabia that you have to be the enemy of Iran. I mean, there will be one day a point of equilibrium. And at this time, we will need everybody around the table.
All right, and we'll pick up when we come back on that point. We're talking about Iranian influence. We'll see what Gulf influence is like here in France. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.